This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised. Don't forget to view our spoiler-free companion video on our Half Past Podcast channel on YouTube. Welcome to the Half Past Podcast. This is episode 22, the movie review of The Last Witch Hunter. We will also be discussing the Point Break trailer. I'm Graham Ricks, and here with me is my friend and co-pilot Ian Jones.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Just got through watching some witch hunting.
Yeah, so why is it that people keep coming up to me and asking me if I've seen any good movies lately? Now, maybe that's just being polite because people know how much I like movies.
Yeah.
But it's like, look, I talk about this every week. I talk about this subject. So, and you don't even have to listen to the whole show. We do a 1 minute little thing.
Yes, we do. That
answers. What's that?
It happens to me too. So I don't get it.
Oh, have you seen any good movies lately? Yes.
Apparently all of our friends are just not listening. But that's all right.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly what that is. I'm not listening to your podcast. Just tell me if this movie was good or not.
Yep, that keeps happening to me too. All right, Jones, let's go ahead and get this Point Break trailer, huh?
Oh, okay. It's just I feel like we should be talking about that Star Wars trailer. But there isn't really much to talk about. It's just awesome, right?
Well, yeah. It's just I was planning on waiting for a later podcast for that, but we could talk about that one if you want.
Well, since we may as well talk about Point Break because I think everyone's already going to go and see Star Wars.
Yes. Well, the first thing I have to say about Point Break is it's one of those remakes I don't understand. The 1991 version of this movie wasn't all that great to begin with. I'm not sure why they would try to remake this one. But this one looks more expensive and more intense, that's for sure. And I also like that it looks like some of the dead presidents will return, that's fun. That's always good. The concept is definitely exactly the same, except they're all like base jumpers instead of like skydivers and surfers and stuff.
Yeah, they're all extreme athletes, which apparently the FBI also employs.
Which doesn't make any sense. I don't think the FBI why would they take the risk?
Yeah, why not just bring them down if you know who they are?
Pretty much. So I don't have anything else for this movie. I think it's going to be probably about as good as the other one, which means it's probably going to be something that if it shows up on TV, you might give it a watch.
Maybe
that's about it.
Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised.
Maybe.
You think Keanu's going to make a appearance in this? Did he die in the first one?
No,
Oh, okay.
They end up, I believe it ends with it's the same kind of ending because in this trailer he decides he's like there's nothing but gravity and then he just falls without anything, which is really similar to how the other one ends, but it's Keanu jumps after him and it's him, he just jumps off the plane without a freaking parachute. And so Keanu jumps down with him, and, they have Keanu has a parachute or whatever. They do all that stuff, but.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Well, I think I'm mixing up my terrible Keanu Reeves movies.
Well, there's a lot of them.
I know, because I remember Point Break. Well, for some reason, I'm mixing in scenes from all the other ones. Yeah. Hey everyone, what was the name of that terrible Keanu Reeves movie?
Silence among the office.
You're gonna have to be more specific.
Yep, that's how that works.
Everyone just looks at me with a blank stare.
I'm sorry, we don't know which one you're talking about. Alright, I guess we're done with this Pork Break trailer. You want to get into some Star Wars? I'll talk about some Star Wars.
Okay, yeah.
Because that new trailer just popped and makes it look awesome.
How about a heavy dose of Han Solo?
Yeah, it seems like we're going to get a lot of him in this movie, right?
Yeah, just from the shots, at least maybe a second half. You know.
That's just crazy, man. It's going to be fun. It looks so good. I mean, I'm ready to make it seem like it's definitely going to be one of my favorite Star Wars movies already. And that scares me.
Well, and of course, the thing everyone's talking about is where the hell's Luke Skywalker?
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of, if you haven't heard by now, there's a bunch of stuff swirling around the internet. I don't even want to get into it because I wish people would stop talking about it.
Well, yeah, which is fine.
Eventually, someone's going to be right, though, about their theory, and I just don't want to hear it. Like even on Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yeah.
I had a coworker tell me, "Oh, well, thanks for ruining the big twist of the movie, Ian." because I announced to everyone, hey, who's going to see Khan this weekend?
Yeah.
And I didn't really know that for sure because the studio had released, publicity stuff saying that was not that character. They gave him a different name. But everyone kind of saw through it anyway.
Yeah. They tried to hide it, but we all saw through it.
All right. So, yeah, I was like, I don't really think I spoiled anything for you.
Yeah.
You still got to see Benedict.
You did get to see Benedict Cumberbatch, which he did a very good job as Khan, so I really enjoyed that movie. All right, Jules, we spent enough time on these trailers. Let's go ahead and get into the movie review.
All right.
After being cursed with immortality by the Witch Queen, the last witch hunter is all that stands between humanity and the most dangerous witches in the world. This movie is directed by Breck Eisner, who also did Sahara and the Crazies, which means this is a director that I don't like.
I agree with you completely.
His movie list is not good.
He also doesn't work a whole lot.
No, he doesn't.
Either. There's some pretty significant breaks in between his projects.
Yeah, and I really think he should probably work more often to keep up his skills. So he's starring Vin Diesel as Calder. He was, of course, in Fast and Furious. He's Riddick and a Triple X.
Yeah, he is... his real name is actually Mark Sinclair.
Yep.
We talk about this all the time, that there are so many strange names in Hollywood that are not easy to pronounce.
No,
Mark
really
Sinclair
hard.
is pretty easy,
yes.
But Vin Diesel's a much better name.
Yeah,
I think if you're going to be a movie star, and I don't get why more people aren't doing that.
I don't know. I think it's just a newer generation of actors. They just don't. They're just using their real names unless it's Olivia Cockburn.
So if you ever hear me laugh when our host is reading names, it is because I'm not snickering at the actor, usually, unless it's Josh Gad. But it's because I'm so glad I didn't have to try to pronounce that name.
Oh, fantastic.
Vin Diesel is the biggest Dungeons and Dragons nerd on the planet.
Yes.
He's actually one of us. He is a dork. And I think a lot of people don't realize that because of the Fast and Furious movies.
Well, just all of his movies, really.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he's an action star, but he's a nerd.
Yeah, he is in our category.
Yeah. Rose Leslie as Chloe. She was in Game of Thrones and Downtown Abbey. She's also in an episode of Locked Up Abroad, if you find that one. That's real interesting.
Yeah, I love when you mention that.
Elijah Wood as Dolan the 37th. He was in Deep Impact, of course, Lord of the Rings, and Sin City. And he is continuing on with this not getting typecast type of thing. Like, he does such different things in everything he does. Olafur Dari Olafsson as Belial. Oh man.
Awesome. Great name.
That's going to be fun later. Contraband, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and A Walk Among the Tombstones, which was that Liam Neeson movie that everybody thought was Taken 3, but it's not. You remember that trailer?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It came out around the same time. They're like, oh, this has to be Taken 3. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is a different movie. It's so strange how Liam Neeson has turned into this actor. Like, he's been acting for years, and he never really was that type of, like, action star type actor.
Right,
He had the superhero one. Which one was that? Darkman. But that was, like, about it. And all of a sudden, he's just, like, hunting you down. A lot, man. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that seems to be if you look at his earlier work, for sure, he was really just this dramatic actor. And he was in Schindler's List. And
yeah, it's real strange.
Now he beats people up for a living.
Yeah.
He beats up stunt guys for a living.
Rita Owen as Gleiser. Is that how you say that? Glaser? I'm pretty sure it was Glaser. She was in AI and, of course, Star Wars Episode 2 and 3. So she played that weird alien that was... God, what was that? What planet was that? Ugh. That's gonna bother me. Well, but where they were making all the clones...
Oh, yeah. No,
that was her voice acting, and then she's like one of the senators.
Yeah, she's a senator. She's a senator in Star Wars. So...
Well, yeah, she's a senator in Episode 3. But in Episode 2, she's that weird alien thing that's that are working on the clones.
So she basically plays the best kind of parts in the prequels, is what you're telling me. The weird clone race, and then, of course, the senators.
Yeah.
Which, what's Star Wars without some political debates?
Yeah.
Open political debates.
Julie Engelbrecht is the Witch Queen. She has been in a lot of French and German movies, so I couldn't find anything that she's done here in the U.S. And last but not least, of course, Michael Caine as Dolan the 36th. He has been in a ton of movies, and I've always liked Michael Caine. And I'm just going to go ahead and say Secondhand Lions, the Dark Knight movies, and Inception.
And Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Yes.
That's one of my favorites, so...
Yeah, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is really good, and so is Get Carter.
Oh, yeah, the original?
The original Get Carter,
yeah. Okay,
that's really, really good stuff. I mean, he's been acting for a very long time, and he's just kind of a real badass actor. And people don't realize that he played those types of roles when he was younger, where he's just like spending the whole time with a gun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when he was younger, and especially in Get Carter.
Yeah. That's all our characters, Jones, so let's go ahead and get into our quirks and likes for this movie.
All right, I got a few.
Yeah, well, let's take our break. All right, back from our break here. Let's go ahead and start with my quirks. my first quirk that I have here is I'm surprised at how often we got to see Vin Diesel with hair because of all the flashbacks. And it just looks weird every time. I feel like they should have just left the hair out entirely. It's such a weird thing. The other thing I have for this movie is that I think the plot is kind of strange, and one of the things that annoys me about this movie is kind of his conflict throughout the entire movie is just disappears at the end of the movie with no change at all. So it's like it's like the character was supposed to grow here, but
okay,
but there is no growth there. Like, the whole point is that he's cursed with immortality, and he actually wants to die so he can see his family again. But he doesn't finish it at the end of the movie.
Okay, so that's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
And because one of the first things I said too, and I don't even know if I agree that he wants to be reunited with his family again. That's how odd I thought this was. Like, this character, Calder, that Vin Diesel plays, is so one note. Yes. And you are absolutely right. There is no sort of development.
No.
He just stays the same guy the entire time.
Yeah. And I think that is a huge problem with this movie, because it's like you said, I think the plot, he should want to go be reunited with his family, but you don't get that from him at all, like, as the character. So it's a very strange kind of thing with this movie, and I know you typically don't like movies that want to kill off the main character anyway, but I feel like it kind of needed to be there just to make the plot make sense. And even if it did, even if they decided to keep him alive, it seems like there should have been more development of this character and this growth to where he realizes that he really needs to be here to save humanity or protect humanity, as opposed to him being reunited with his family. But that is not touched upon at all. It's very, very interesting.
And there's different ways you could have gone with this, because he's been alive for 800 years.
Yeah.
And he's cursed with immortality, which I'll talk about when I get to my thing. But you would think that he would just be hunting these things down to extinction.
Yeah, which he mentions.
And that maybe but that maybe then he would fall in love with one of them, and maybe that's where the story might go, to where he realizes some of them aren't good or bad, but he just he knows that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, he gives them free passes. Yeah, and then they just walk all over him, and then he's like, well, okay, whatever. He'll kill these ones.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't make any sense, because he doesn't change at any point, like you're saying. And so he doesn't start off extreme and then realize, well, some witches are good. That just never really gets addressed. He just stays he's totally PC for a guy who kills people.
Yeah. One of the other things I have about this movie is I kind of wanted it to be like The Mummy, and it just doesn't have the same charm. I almost think this movie takes itself a little too seriously, and I just, the whole time, and I think this is maybe this is a lot of issues I have with this movie anyway, is because I was expecting it to be like The Mummy. I was expecting a little more charm, and I was expecting less CG. When you watch The Mummy, they are very careful about their choices on what they're going to use computers to do and not. And I think that's what really makes that movie so much better, in my opinion. I feel like this movie suffers from a little too much CG in it. For instance, some of the visuals are interesting, but then all the ones that has them interacting with the actors just doesn't look good. There's not enough. They didn't do enough with the actual actors after the fact when they did all these compositing shots, which just bothers the heck out of me. And so I feel like the movie suffers from a little too much CG. I think they should have been more selective on their choices.
Yeah, the movie is packed with some fun visuals, but it's kind of a mixed bag, especially with the scenes, I think, with the Witch Queen.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. And, we are visual effects guys, but I think some of these scenes, I think, might have looked better had he been fighting someone who was actually there.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a balance that you have to achieve, and I think this movie just misses it. I think they decided to use computers on things they probably shouldn't have, and that's one of the things that I also, bringing up the Mummy again, that I enjoy about the Mummy. I'll tell you one thing though, these are some creepy looking witches at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And and I don't know if I like that or not, but man, it's it's definitely a different interpretation of a witch that you are used to. And so I thought it's definitely kind of a weird thing about this movie. I got a question for you, Jones.
Okay.
How long did it take you to know that Elijah Wood was not a good guy?
I just got that feeling immediately. But
right?
I didn't. Yeah. It just seemed weird to me that there was just something about the way he was presenting himself.
Yeah.
And then the fact that he just disappears. And that was one of my things, too. If you're going to have Elijah Wood and Michael Caine in this movie interacting with Vin Diesel, which I think is a good thing on paper.
Yeah.
Because I think it's good to have those kind of quality actors working with Vin Diesel. I think they need to be in the movie. They need to play a bigger part in the movie.
Yeah.
And there's a point where Elijah Wood, who was introduced in the beginning, simply disappears.
Yeah, and then he just isn't there.
Yeah, and then he shows up at the end, and what the hell was he doing the entire time when Vin Diesel is walking around?
I have no idea.
So it became pretty clear that maybe something wasn't really right there.
Yeah, I thought of it instantly also. It just seemed like as soon as he was introduced, I'm like, this guy is not a good character at all. And I thought that was a very unfortunate thing because it was so predictable. And I don't know if it was just how Elijah Wood presented that character or not, but that's kind of what I kind of felt like. The other thing, I guess this is the last thing I got here, and that's the way the movie ends with the way he kills the Witch Queen. Throughout the whole movie, he keeps saying iron and fire. And you get the assumption that that's how he's supposed to take the queen out. But he doesn't reignite the blade at the end of the movie when he kills her. So is the witch the flame at the end of the movie? Or because he fights her, and in the process the sword gets knocked out of his hand, it goes into the water, there's a clear shot of it, of the flames going down because it's no longer there. Well, then his family tells him to wake back up, and he wakes back up, and then he takes her out, and he even says iron and fire, or iron and flame, and he throws the sword, but the sword is not ignited.
Oh, wow! I didn't even pick up on that.
And I'm like, why? All throughout the movie, the way he was able to kill her and kill all these other witches was because of the flames. but there is no flames at all. He doesn't reignite the blade. I thought that was the weirdest thing. I'm like, that just seems like a huge plot hole. So even the way she dies, she turns into like ash. So I'm like, is she the flame? So the thing that kills her, she is? I was just confused at the end of the movie when the way they did that.
Well, you may not be the only one. I guess I'm not really. I just wasn't really happy with how he dispatched of the main villain,
Yeah.
if you could even call her that, and this Belial character,
Yeah.
which they set up at the beginning of the movie, just to have him also die by a thrown dagger.
Yes.
So I didn't even think. And does he end up staying immortal at the end of this thing?
Yeah, because that's the other thing. That's the problem I have with the plot that I was talking about at the beginning of the movie, because the whole point is that she curses him, but she curses him by giving him immortality, but really he's just holding on to it so that she can be reborn.
Right, yeah.
So he takes her out and her heart's still beating, so he's still alive. And so they make the decision to not take out the heart, which means this is possible for this to just happen again later.
Yeah, which, I wasn't really that crazy about. I mean, they said they weren't sure what would happen when if the heart was destroyed, although they've got that flashback sequence.
Yeah.
To where obviously they're connected. So maybe she can come back?
I have no idea. To me, it seems like the movie ends the same way it began. And that's a problem for me.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all my quirks. What do you got?
The first thing is the beginning. The first shot of the movie starts off, it's 800 years ago, and the witch hunters are there to enter this gigantic tree, where the witch queen lives. I don't understand why they didn't just burn that damn tree down.
Why not just place?
Yeah, why not just set it on fire? If that's where all the bad witches are, just set the damn thing on fire. That's what happened anyway, by accident.
Yes.
Or by, but I mean...
Well, maybe because
don't go in there. Jeez.
Maybe because they still needed the iron part. Iron and flame. Ugh. So you're saying they should have just set it afire and then waited.
Yep.
And then just started stabbing witches as they're running out.
Yeah. And I get you don't have a movie that way, but it just seems like, people who lived back then were just as smart as people who live now. And that's the thing that bugs me. Now there are some things people were stupid about because they didn't have the education.
Yeah. But
I think you can figure out how to set something ablaze.
Just set it afire.
That was a tactic.
They just start stabbing witches.
You don't have to send your army into an enemy village. Sometimes you can just shoot flaming arrows and then sort them out.
All right.
The next scene is an airplane scene, and this is kind of one of those things where I feel like I could almost talk about every scene and put a quirk in it. But there's an airplane scene where he's on an airplane, and there's kind of a little bit of a humor in it, but it's oddly, it almost takes you out of the movie a bit because, they mentioned that Calder has adapted really well over the years.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cheat to me. Like, I think he should be genuinely annoyed with all this technology instead of embracing it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a more fun thing to do. But so anyway, he's on this airplane. Did he really buy a plane ticket just to accost a witch on a plane?
Apparently.
I mean, really? You didn't get her before the airport? You waited and then you went through... Here's the thing. He went through airport security. He like got his plane tickets.
Here's
made
the
sure
thing.
he was on the same flight.
He also has an affinity for stewardesses, also though. So
Okay, well,
that's why.
And I guess that's just for the guys.
Yeah,
That scene is just for the guys. That actress, by the way, and I didn't look her name up. She looks the same in everything she does. I just saw her, I think, in an episode of iZombie, but she was in Arrow that way. In every movie,
Wow.
she never plays a different. She always looks like that. I don't even think she changes her clothes. I think she always shows up with the exact same jacket. They don't have to put her into costuming or makeup. She just does it all. She shows up. She looks exactly like that.
Oh, that's great.
A big one for me is they introduced this character Chloe, which is supposed to be his love interest.
Yeah.
And the first thing he does is he shows up to her bar, which has a bunch of witches in it.
Yep.
And those people obviously look like witches. Which I have a problem with. But
because every single witch you see in this movie is they're not blending in at all.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Except for maybe the supermodels, and that to me doesn't make any sense at all.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
But that was actually a different one I was annoyed with. So he shows up and he's at her bar. Everyone freaks out and leaves.
Yeah.
And the result of the conversation they have is, the bad guy, Belial, shows up and just torches the whole place.
Yep.
And she decides to help him. I don't get that at all. Like this is the worst thing that could happen to you as a witch is Calder showing up.
Oh, yeah.
And within a few minutes of meeting him, another witch shows up and torches your bar.
Yep.
Because you're helping him. And it just seems like, why would you stay with this guy?
No, you would probably avoid him like the plague at that point in time.
To get your money? No one's going back there.
No, nobody's going back.
So there's kind of a fun scene that has to do with this bakery, which I kind of like. But I don't understand why witches are running a bakery. It's really creepy because they're selling people maggots.
Yeah.
And making them think that they're eating delicious treats, which I will never look at a cupcake the same way again. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Oh, man.
But, the runway show in The Witches, I don't get that. That almost seems like you're almost getting into, like, vampire territory.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't, I guess we talked about, the whole curse with immortality thing and them not really doing anything with it.
No.
It's weird. Part of this movie seems like a detective story. And then the other part of it just seems like an acid trip. And then because there are so many flashback sequences where stuff's just out of focus and he's just looking around.
Yep, there's a lot of that in this movie.
And then there's a lot of fighting of CG characters.
Yep.
And I'm not really sure, they don't really do any of those things well.
No.
Constantine really, which I think is like what this movie was trying to be.
Mm-hmm.
I thought did all of this, everything that they tried doing in The Witch Hunter. I think Constantine did better.
Well, that's interesting. I never watched Constantine, so.
I think that's it for quirks. I could probably go on, but
well, we're running long here.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right.
All right, so you said just not too long ago, just a second ago, you were saying that there was a lot of detective work. And I thought that was one of my likes of this movie, because I felt like if they would have just kind of kept that going throughout, and I think that his character would probably be really good at this because he's been doing it for 800 years and he hunts witches. That's the point. So the fact that he has this detective scenes in it makes a lot of sense to me. And I like that aspect to it, to where he's really just kind of figuring stuff out. And I just wish there was more development with that. I do like the fact I have a soft spot for flaming swords, so that's just always a plus for me. Whenever a sword is on fire, I'm golden. The last thing I have is that it definitely has some occasional funny parts that are just kind of fun. I just wish there was more of it. This movie, in my opinion, has a lot of pieces that are good, but the way that the puzzle's put together is just wrong. It just doesn't quite make sense. And I think that's what kills this movie for me. So that's actually all I have for the likes.
So yeah, number 3 on my likes was Flaming Sword Fight.
Yep.
So that's a good one. The movie is packed with some fun visuals, but some of them are pretty bad.
Yeah.
But there was the one scene that I think I really liked the most was when he's walking through the bakery. Whether or not it makes sense or not, I just thought it was cool that guy was collecting butterflies.
Yeah.
That was just visually, that was really stunning.
Yeah, it was.
And there's some other things like, him helping out a kid who has fallen into a trap and, is walking around a building following candy.
Trying to pick up these giant gummy bears.
And then you see what the building really is.
Yeah.
And, I think the movie needed more of that.
Yeah, I agree with you fully, because that was actually a really cool scene, too, where he helps the kid out for that. This movie, I think, had a lot of good stuff in it. It just, the way they put it together was not quite right.
And, I could see this movie really having a cult following, because I don't know, I almost got the feeling like everyone knew that the critics were going to really take a bite out of this, because it's really designed for a specific group.
Yeah.
It really targets in on a specific group. And I guess that's kind of a like I have, because they could have gone a different way. They could have made it more, I think, middle of the road, just in terms of audience appeal. But I think there's too many problems with the main character and how the story develops. So I think you're either going to love it or hate it. And I really felt like the filmmakers knew that going in.
All right.
I think that's it for me as far as likes, buddy.
All right, so...
You want to rate this thing?
Yeah, let's rate it. I think this movie has... I think the visuals are interesting, even though some of them are just bad. And there is some fun action sequences. But I think it really suffers for some plot problems and some character development. So I'm going to just go ahead and say skip it.
I'll say this. I think that there's going to be a group of people out there, a small group of people that really enjoy this. So I think if you're a fan of Constantine, if you're a fan of Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters, if those are the kind of movies you like, I think it's definitely Redbox worthy. But otherwise, skip this movie. It just has, it's got a bunch of little issues. And I think for most people, the whole thing's going to be a big turnoff.
Yeah. Well, all right. If anybody would like to contact us, we always have our website, halfpasspodcast.com.
Like us on Facebook.
And rate us on iTunes. 5 stars, preferably.
We're on Stitcher and Libsyn.
And you can always email us at halfpastcast@gmail.com. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com. Let us know you're listening. Ask us some questions. Send us some hate mail.
Yes, hate mail is my favorite kind of mail, really, other than blackmail.
Nice.
That's hate mail, and then a close second is blackmail. We're on Twitter. I'm always putting stuff up on Twitter at Half Past Podcast.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. Next week, we actually will have a little break there, Jones.
Oh.
And the week after that is actually Peanuts and Spectre.
How about that?
So we're going to have another 2 for a week.
Okay.
So we'll get a little break and then do 2.
Sounds like a party.
Oh, yeah. That'll be fun. I definitely am excited about Spectre. It might be his last, Jones.
Yeah, which, I think I'm okay with.
All right. That's good. I think as long as the movie's really good, I'm okay with it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's an evergreen character anyway. You can't get too attached
to
a James Bond actor.
No, you can't. This is the Half Past Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
Jonesy.
See you next flick.